Hello and welcome to the Cup of Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, oxygenaddict.com.
Triathlon coaching with Coach Rob.
We are bikehouse.co.uk.
For all your cycling needs.
And triathlonbox.co.uk.
Don't faff in transition again.
Carry your bike box on your top tube. I'm Coach Rob Wilby and I'm joined by the lovely Helen Murray, who I believe, Helen, you are recently returned from slogging the miles out on your TT bike. Am I correct?
Correct. Yes, correct, Rob. I left the house on my bike at 7:30 this morning and I pedalled for just under 3 hours to my mum and dad's house, filled up a water bottle, went for a wee, and then carried on for another 2 hours. By that point, then I could get into the Welsh hills. So, it was a good ride. It was quite lonely. But yeah, I got it done. And the roads over towards our house, if you go the back lanes, they're really, really, really quiet. So I literally didn't see anybody for about an hour and a half. But it was great. It was quite nice weather today. And yeah, I got some climbing. The real sort of climbing came in that second part. So that was good because by that point my legs were already a little bit tired. And I was thinking, Bolton, I'm going to have to do that nice climb on that second lap. I'm not really going to want to do it. So this is good mental prep as well. Come on, get up the hills when you're feeling tired.
Good for you. So 5 hours in the saddle and then a run off the bike as well?
Yeah, I did a 40-minute run off the bike, and that was...
And how'd you feel?
I felt pretty good actually running, and it was pretty much up a hill. Up a hill for about, 10 minutes, run up a hill, then flat, back along the flat and then back down the hill, because again I thought I'm not going to stay flat. Bolton is hilly. I need to try and run off the bike and go up a hill. So I actually
make it specific, mate. You said
so
it.
I genuinely felt pretty good. I really did. And I fueled it today. I mentioned last week that I'd had rice cakes.
Oh yeah.
So today's little joy was I got a wrap, like a tortilla wrap, and I put some honey on one, and then I put peanut butter on another, rolled it up really, really tight, cut it into 3, and then put it in foil. And it actually worked. It worked pretty well. And I had
It's one of my favourites, that, mate. Honey and peanut butter on a wrap.
Yeah,
Very delicious.
Really, really good. And then I did have a bottle of sports drink, but I didn't actually get that far through it. So I probably didn't take on enough, but I did feel pretty good.
You see, that's the big challenge, isn't it? Is stacking the calories in training and getting used to that feeling of forcing them in so that if you don't do it in training, on race day, it ain't going to happen on automatic pilot.
No, I know. For that bit, I don't know. I need to...
How many calories do you reckon you got down you?
Probably not.
In your big mode?
Barely enough.
Really? Just to get through it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, honestly, a one wrap, it can't be that much, can it? I don't know.
That was it for the whole...
2 wraps.
It was right, okay.
2 wraps and a little bottle of sports drink, and that was it.
Okay.
That's not enough, is it?
We need to get some sugar in you, girl.
need to up the nutrition there, or else it's going to be pretty bad. But
yeah. I think the challenge is, it's like in the training ride, you can get that done and you get to the end and then you go and have a good feed.
Yeah.
And of course, race day, you want to be getting off the bike.
Exactly.
With your energy stores, with your petrol tanks full, ready to rock that marathon.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have been full. It probably was about a quarter, I reckon.
Running on fumes.
So it would have been fine, but then had I had to run, a whole marathon, that would have been interesting today.
Yeah, it can get ugly, can't it?
Yeah. Luckily it didn't.
Hey, well, look, good for you for getting 5 hours in the saddle done. Well done, and a 40-minute run off the bike. That's a solid workout. And then, because it's race sim weekend for you, essentially, isn't it? So a big run tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Don't remind me. And then, the day before, in English, yesterday, I did a sprint triathlon as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, so well done on that. Yeah. That was, I'll break it out for the listeners here. You took 3rd overall, so no longer the bridesmaid.
No, I actually, I got 3rd. Woo!
Nice one.
So,
and was it an age group win?
No. No. The age group would have won. And then the lovely Bethan Hughes was second, so she's not in my age group. So I would have been second in the age group.
Second in the
Yeah.
age group.
But the
Well
bit
done.
the bit that was interesting was, so I did it the same race 2 years ago, and I was quicker across everything.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that was good.
And were you giving it full beans on the run, or were you kind of holding it back a bit, thinking about the long run today?
No, I was trying pretty hard on the run.
You were
The
going for
problem,
it.
well, I had probably started to slow down, right? And then Paul Hawkins came past me, who went on to win. And I said to him, so this shows I wasn't going full pelt because I wouldn't have been able to talk if I had. And I said to him, "Oh, you passed me on the bike last time." And he said, "Oh, you're doing well. Come on, stick on my heels." So then obviously,
Oh, that's nice of him.
clearly I couldn't stick on his heels. I think for about 2 seconds.
Jumped onto his elastic waistband and
then
held on like a little koala.
No, then it snapped.
And then off he went.
Yeah, off he went. But that was a really good psychological boost because I know last time, honestly, he passed me towards the end of the bike, and I thought, hey, that's good.
Yeah.
I've made progress. Even if they started late, even if that last male wave started late, it was still
Still something. Anything that you can take to get a mental G up is awesome, isn't it?
So that was
Well done, mate. How much faster were you than 2 years ago then?
So 2 years ago I did 1:23, and yesterday I did 1:19, so 4 minutes.
Wow, hey, that's not shabby over a sprint distance, mate.
That's all right, isn't it? So I was about like 40 seconds faster on the run.
Good
Maybe
stuff.
50.
Well done, yeah.
And then about 3 minutes faster on the bike. 11 seconds faster on the swim.
All that hard work paying off.
No, it barely does, isn't it? 11 seconds. My God.
Well, you're swimming in a baggy tri-suit, though, aren't you? It's not your usual skin-tight swimming suit, so that's got to cost you something, surely.
I don't know.
It's got to.
Not even thinking about it. I didn't get lapped this time, though, in the pool.
4 minutes, mate. That's a big improvement. We'll take that.
We'll take that.
And you were in good shape 2 years ago as well. It wasn't like you were hanging around then.
No. It's all right, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Rob, enough about me. God, that's like boring,
Maybe Helen wins. Maybe Helen wins her own pat on the back this week.
Fist pump of joy.
Get your own fist pump of joy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I think, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but I think anybody who kind of vaguely got anywhere near a finish line at Ironman Texas deserves a fist pump of joy.
Yeah, I tell you what, if anyone didn't see the weather conditions at Ironman Texas, I was watching a few tweets during the day, and it was like, I don't know who it was actually, someone on Facebook that's friended me was racing, and his wife must have been posting photos, and it was like, there's you coming out the swim, there's you on the bike, and it looked like a relatively nice day, right?
Yeah, quite overcast, and it would have been very humid, but yeah, it looked all right, didn't it?
It didn't even look overcast on the photos I saw from the run. Wow. So I mean, maybe it was just a trick of the light, and I wasn't looking for it, you know. Yeah. But boy, oh boy, did they get it!
Yeah. Oh my God. Right, we will tweet a few photos if you haven't seen them of Ironman Texas. So scroll back down our Twitter feed and you'll see some. It just looks absolutely horrendous. So I think the pros had crossed the finish line by this point, so it was affecting the age groupers. Oh my God, it looked awful. Just
was it officially a something? Was it
like a tornado or something,
storm or a hurricane? Or I mean, it was just. It looked like people were getting hosed down by the fire department, didn't it? There was 40-mile-an-hour winds and just sheets of rain, and people sheltering in doorways and runners getting blown against walls, and it looked like Armageddon.
It really, I would not have liked to have been out. I just think it would have been really quite scary as well. Like, yeah, really, really scary, because when nature does something like that, what can you actually do about it?
Yeah,
not a whole load. That's when.
And if you're looking at the business end of another 4 hours of running or whatever, and your Ironman that you've trained all year for, it's just a killer, isn't it?
Oh, and you'd be gutted if you went out there expecting, you know, the old bike course for starters, the sort of the same swim route, because that was changed last minute, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
And a decent race, and then sort of all goes a little bit tits up because of Mother Nature. And
Well, the bike course was already shortened, wasn't
yes,
it, by about, was it 20 miles short or something
right.
like
Yeah,
that?
because they had to change
Because they had roadworks and they did the best they could, and it was right down to the wire as to whether they'd actually be able to find a bike course. So, like they did the best they could, I guess, but you're already feeling pretty shortchanged. It's like someone somewhere doesn't want them holding the event, isn't it?
Yeah, probably Mother Nature.
We tried to warn you with the roadworks.
Exactly.
Okay,
And the
it's coming.
swim, like changing the swim course, the day before? So
Yeah, well, there was a tweet I read by Matt Dixon from Purple Patch who said, "My best advice to you is if you're going to swim before race day, do it in a pool. Do not go in the water there." And I thought, whoa, that's pretty strong. There must be something going on. Now, does he still coach? Was it Emma Kate Libbury that was racing there?
yeah, but he doesn't coach her anymore.
No, I just wondered whether there was some connection with an athlete he was coaching, because obviously he wouldn't have been there himself, would he? So well, maybe he got feedback from his athletes, but yeah, maybe that's not the connection.
Wow.
But yeah, beastly.
That is not good. Well, one GB age grouper who was out there is Dean Edwards, and he said that it was the worst storm he's ever seen, let alone contend with 18 miles into an Ironman, apparently 20% DNF'd. And he just says it was all a little bit like ridiculous, and that they started the award ceremony by saying that all the times on the track are incorrect. And he said that they were basing the Kona qualifying times based on what position you were in at the last timing map when they decided to halt the race. So,
Oh boy.
Yeah, it just sounds
good day to go not so on the bike, hey?
But I mean, I don't know, like what else could they do? Like they do have to have a call off point at some point, don't they? Because it was so dangerous.
Oh, man, imagine being in the situation of sorting that out. At least they made the decision, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, you'd just be gutted though. And then I saw like lots of messages on Facebook sort of saying, my time's not been adjusted, or this is complete shambles. Some people carried on running when they had been told, you have to.
So what did they basically say, like, stop running?
Yeah.
The race is paused or the race is stopped, and some people carried on and some stopped and sheltered. And...
Yeah. So, yeah, it would be a logistical nightmare.
On the list, imagine as a race director, on the list of things you've got on the list, it wouldn't even be on page 7 of the things you haven't thought of, would it? But what if there's a hurricane blows in after the pros have finished, but while the age groupers are still running? How do we allocate Kona slots?
Oh, God.
Boy.
Tricky one. So, yeah, well done to everyone who finished.
Yeah, you got that right.
Oh, God. Shall we go over the pro results, Rob?
Yeah, let's do that. We had, on the ladies' side, in fact, I'm going to give it a go. Is it Julia Geier? Am I correct with that? Gajer from Germany.
It could be. Could be Gager.
Julia Geier?
Yeah.
I give it a go. So she was 8 hours 10, which is a nice time to have on your CV as a lady, isn't it?
Yeah, that's good.
Jodie Robertson from the USA in 8:16. And Lisa Roberts from the USA in 8:17. So not much in it. Over on the men's side, Patrick Langer put a 7:13 together. So thank you very much.
Yep.
20 miles short on the bike, but apparently he closed it down with a sub 2:40 run.
Yeah, like a really impressive run. And that was his first Ironman.
Was it really? Good knowledge.
Yeah, he's more of a duathlete. So that's, really,
he's put a
really
mark
impressive.
On the board there for himself, hasn't he?
Matt Russell was second in 7:21, and then Terenzo Bozzoni was third in 7:25. Well, we should.
I tell you what, mate, we've got to give Terenzo the Helen Murray Always the Bridesmaid Award, haven't we? Because that must be about his 16th podium and not win since we've been doing the show.
Hey, consistency though,
Come on, Terenzo, win one for us. We're rooting for you, buddy.
He got
maybe
one
if
of
we
the
got him on the show as a guest, maybe that would give him the G up that he needs to to finally get that extra bit of gas.
Which 70 point he won the first of the Triple Crown.
Worlds, didn't
he win the first of the Triple Crowns?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So blooming good athlete. The other person
quality. Yeah, Maka was always saying that he thought Terenzo was the guy to beat in Kona, the year that Maka won it the last time, he'd been out training with Terenzo
Yeah.
and really talked him up as like, this guy's gonna be the next big thing, and he's just never quite had his win, has he?
But he's got those consistent.
Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
superstar athlete, and I think he's an awesome guy.
Time will come. The time will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get him on the podcast. That'll get him there.
Rob, Lauren Brandon got the fastest swim of the day, men or women, in 48:32. And the only other person who's done that is Jodie Swallow at Ironman Sweden a couple of years ago. Sadly,
brilliant.
Beck Keat, who we had on the podcast the other week, she collapsed, I think, mile 12 into the run. So not the race that... No, not the race that...
She was off the bike in, was it second or
Yeah,
third?
yeah, came off bike in second.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah, and Emma Kate Libri, again, another pro who we have had on previously. She finished in 8th. I think it was her third Ironman. And then, did you see on the guys' side? Was it Starkey? I think he was like blitzing the bike, but then I don't know, pulled a nerve or something.
Foot problem.
Yeah,
foot problem on the run.
Yeah. So,
and again, it's not the race for him, is it? With it being 20 miles short, it's taking away from his strength, hasn't it? Really, taking 20 miles off him.
Well, yeah, but he did. He had a massive lead coming off the bike.
Yeah. Well, even with that, he's gonna
run down.
Go nuts, isn't he?
Yeah. So yeah, and I think Harry Wiltshire was. I think he was a DNF as well, actually.
And I saw Scott Nerdley's name in there as well. Scott Nerdley finished, I think, 34th. So he's back racing pro, but obviously didn't have the race he was hoping for there.
No. But, no.
Yeah. Oh, well, interesting times. I wonder if any of the listeners raced Ironman Texas apart from Dean. Be interesting to hear your stories on Twitter.
Oh, definitely. Let us know. For sure, let us know.
Get some video clips.
We'll have to find some and we'll put them up, definitely.
I remember seeing one from Callum Millwood. He posted one after he'd finished. And he was like hiding in the transition tent, filming it outside, going, "Yeah, I'm not going out there."
You know when the winners they often go back and give like the last finishers their medals, like the pro winners, and they go back to you'd just be like, "Nah, that's all right." But to be fair, I think they did.
I'll just stay inside.
Yeah, I think they did go back though. Julia Gauger did, or Gaia. So yeah, well done. Horrendous conditions out there in Texas. So
oh boy, yeah. All right, so over to the ITU World Triathlon Series in Yokohama.
Yes. Now this was again we had a sort of a, what's the word for 4 people, Rob? I can't think. Not a trio.
Quad.
Yeah, we had a quad of British athletes racing. They were Adam Bowden, Matthew Sharp, Tom Bishop, and Gordon Benson. And again, we know that third spot on the men's team is still up for grabs. And I don't know if you saw any of the coverage, but...
No, I didn't get to see it. Tell me what happened.
Okay.
Fill me in.
Well, all 4 of the British guys were together on the bike at one point, like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So Tom Bishop and Gordon Benson were working their butts off on the bike. And yeah, the 4 of them were leading out the whole pack, really. And then onto the run, Mario Mola did his thing and blitzed it. Crisanto Grajales of Mexico was second, with Christian Blumenfeld of Norway in third. Now, I was watching the run, and Blumenfeld was sticking to Mola for a bit of it. It's like, oh my God, what's this new Norwegian dude doing? So he had a really, really good result. And then Adam...
Because, of course, it's probably one of their selection races, right?
A lot of the countries, yeah.
Because a lot of them are selecting from it, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's the race to have the race of your life in.
That's it. So Christian Blumenfeld did that for Norway. And then Adam Bowden was the top GB finisher. He was finished in 12th in 1:47, ahead of Matt Sharp in 26th, Tom Bishop 49th, and Gordon Benson 50th. So still a lot of... that all interesting decision.
So was the deal there Tom Bishop and Gordon Benson were basically working on the mystique role for Adam Bowden and trying to show their chops on the bike?
To be honest, I don't know. Don't know.
I'm intrigued to know what's going to happen for the
Oh,
selection.
can't wait. It's going to be,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be really good. And then Gwen Jorgensen did another ridiculous run, like 32 minutes something, and won by a minute. So she did 1:56. Ashley Gentle of Oz second in 1:57, and Ai Ueda of Japan came third. So nice home podium there for the Japanese.
Good stuff. Right, and we've got one other race result for tonight, haven't we? We've got the British Sprint Championships
Yeah.
held at Emberton.
Yep. So James Phillips took out the win in 59 flat. He did what did he do? 10-minute swim, 29:55 on the bike, and then his run was. There were two times here for the run, Rob. Why would that be?
I don't know.
8:30 and 8:35. Anyway, there we go. Edward Castro was second. Oh, I guess the run split up into two. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Being thick. Okay, Edward Castro was second of Bedford Road Cycling Club in 59:11, and Gary Hughes was third in 59:15. Over on the women's side, Sarah Lewis took out the win from Team Free Speed. 106.16 ahead of Laura Fenwick from Oxford University in 106.33, who finished ahead of Elizabeth Bullivant of Racing TNT in 107.
Cracking results there. Yeah. Right, and all of that leads us on to today's interview. We've got an interview with Andy Blow. Now, Andy Blow's name might be familiar to some of you. You'll have seen him writing in national magazines, and he was very, very good, 70.3, an Ironman athlete himself in his own right back in the day, back in the early 2000s. I think he finished... Oh, do you know, he was well up there in the UK 70.3 races. And a respected sports scientist has gone on to found a company called Precision Hydration. So I thought we'd get him on with a lot of people's races coming up and, you know, a lot of people going out to hot places to race, getting the hydration and, you know, more importantly, the electrolytes, as we'll discuss, is really, really important. So we'll hand over to today's interview with Andy Blow. Right, so we're joined by Andy Blow from Precision Hydration. Andy, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show and talk to us, mate. It's lovely to be able to get you on, partly from my own selfish point of view, because I remember when I was starting out back in triathlon, back in sort of 2001, 2002, I guess, you were one of the big hotshot names on the scene at the time, man. So this is a little bit of star worship for me, mate.
Oh, this is certainly the first time anyone said anything like that, Rob. I don't think I've ever been star worship before. I'm not sure it's all that justified.
No, at the time you were 220 all the time. You were writing articles about, you know, you'd set your stall out for. Let me get this right. Was it? When would it have been? When Half Ironman UK, as it was down in Sherborne, right?
Yes, it was in Sherborne in Dorset. I was living. It was
2004. Would that have been
around then? Yeah, sort of 2000. Yeah, 2003, 2004, that sort of time.
And as I recall, you had a really, really fast half marathon at the end. Did you finish second? Am I right with that?
I finished third, but I did have the fastest run, I think. So
there you see, I remember all this stuff, man. 15 years later, that's what a stato geek I am.
I'm glad someone was watching. I had a good day.
Dude, I haven't even gone back to the records and checked that. That's really sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a great.
So listen, let's go on and let's share your story then from back in the day. When did you get into triathlon, and how old were you when you got into all of that? Let's talk about your history as an athlete first.
Well, I think I probably did. I've got a T-shirt somewhere from a biathlon in 1995, I think it is. So
good effort.
I'd have been a youngster then, so I'd have been, what would I have been, 16 years old then, and my dad took me along to do some swimming and running events. I used to play a lot of football and that, you know, the usual sort of stuff, but I wasn't all that good, and ended up. I don't think I was brilliant as an endurance athlete, but I really liked it, and I think it's one of those things that if you like it and are prepared to, you sort of get your teeth into it and work quite hard, you start to do all right. And I used to run a bit of cross country, do a bit of swimming, got a road bike, and yeah, I was doing triathlon in the mid '90s when it was still acceptable to wear speedos if you weren't Faris Al Sultan, and If you,
Hey, it's coming
yeah,
back. Who
well, I
was it we
heard that
saw
the
in
other
the other
day.
day?
Yeah, I heard that the other day. It's
It's not good.
quite funny. Um,
Leave it in the 90s,
yeah,
man.
exactly. So yeah, no, I was doing it back then, and when it was basically a weird thing that a bunch of us did in leisure centre car parks on a Sunday morning, very early. It's phenomenal what it's turned into, all these years later.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah. So you ended up sort of obviously very competitive in the half Ironman scene. What would have been your best result, do you think, for you?
Well, almost undoubtedly the one that you've kindly dredged up for me, where I got third overall at half Ironman UK. I had a couple of top tens at Ironman UK, and I won my age group at the Xterra Worlds as well. I think that was in around 2000. I think it was the year 2000 actually.
Oh,
So
I didn't know you'd been over to the dark side as well and done some Xterra. That's very
yeah,
impressive.
that was really cool actually. It was in the days when Peter Reid was winning Hawaii Ironman, and they would do the double race. I don't know if they still do that, where they give the fastest time to the guy who does the prize the fastest time for the Ironman, and then a week later the Xterra. So for me back then, that was a real like mingling with the superstars type experience. It was really cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's awesome. And did you ever go to Hawaii?
I did, yeah. I qualified when I did that race in Sherborne, actually, because that was back in those days. You could qualify at a half distance still, and
Oh, that's
that's
right. Yeah, they still had slots at halves, didn't they?
yeah,
And even the pros won a slot, didn't
they
they?
did, yeah. So that was because that was my whole aim, because I'd missed the slot by about 20 seconds at Llanberis the year before when it was half Ironman UK at Llanberis.
Oh, breaks your
So
heart.
got the slot the following year, and then went in 2004, but did the classic thing of overtraining myself, because I had a whole year and a bit to prep for it. Really got quite injured, and I ended up sort of underperforming in Hawaii. But actually, in retrospect, a lot of the reason why I underperformed in Hawaii was because I didn't know how to prepare and handle for the heat and humidity and everything like that. And I definitely, that was one of my big experiences of screwing up my hydration and nutrition and everything, and what eventually led to forming the company Precision Hydration that I'm running now.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's a nice segue, man. You're a very professional at. So I'm really interested in basically the way that we can. I think hydration people hear the phrase and they just think, well, I've just got to drink enough water. I'm doing my half Ironman or my Ironman, and I've just got to make sure I drink enough water. And people, and understandably so, because that's the case in the real world. If you're going to do a 10K, you've just got to drink some water.
Mm.
The effect of sweat and losing salt and losing sodium and losing potassium can be absolutely enormous, and can be absolutely deadly as well, as I'm sure you're about to tell us. So a little backstory for you: I struggled horrendously with putting any kind of performances at long distance races together
Yeah,
in the heat. I would never be a particularly heavy sweater, but I'm a very salty sweater. And so in the days before I knew about taking salt tablets, I would be in a world of pain. And 3 or 4 of the iron and half iron races I've done in the heat, I ended up in the med tent having 2 or 3 drips and
yeah.
being sick, and your classic hyponatremia symptoms. So do you want to tell us a little about your story and how the hydration affected you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always struggled in the heat. Even as a youngster, I remember finding races in hot conditions unbelievably difficult. I used to get a lot of cramps. I used to always just feel like, whilst everyone's performance, the edge goes off the performance when it's very hot, I sort of felt a bit like unfairly penalised for some reason. And as a result, what I often tended to do was drink more, because I thought I must be getting dehydrated. That was kind of the message that the sports nutrition world was giving out, is like, you've got to drink a lot. So I would
Yeah.
drink a lot. I'd usually pretty much drink water. And I gave myself a mild case of hyponatremia on more than one occasion without really understanding what had happened to me. And yeah, like I say, I would often cramp. There was, I even cramped like in the last 50 yards of Ironman UK one year when I was trying to sort of sprint to get past someone, and my whole body just locked up. And
Oh,
it was awful. It used to take me days to recover, and all the rest of it. A friend of mine who's a a doctor, a guy called Raj Jutli, who's a heart surgeon. He sort of put me onto this idea that maybe I was losing a lot of salt, because he'd seen after races that I've got salt, in my eyebrows and on my kit and everywhere. And so he got me sweat tested, which was where you take a sample of the sweat and analyse the sodium concentration, the salt concentration. Mine unsurprisingly turned out to be really, really high. And I also have a high sweat rate as well. So the amount of salt and fluid that I was losing, he calculated was off the charts. It was, litres and litres of fluid and grams of salt in an Ironman. So after that, sort of 2005, 2006 and onwards, I started to aggressively supplement with a lot more salt tablets, which is about all that was available at the time. And for me, it was like a miracle. All of a sudden, I went from hobbling around a 3:33, 4-hour marathon in an Ironman, not really being able to run. I was down at 3 hours and feeling how I thought I should feel. It was pretty much a game changer, and that at that time was kind of good enough for me. I didn't think too much more of it, because I've solved my own problem. Great. I spoke to a few of my mates about it. I was starting to coach a couple of athletes at the time. I'd chat to them about it, and that was it. But as I sort of stopped racing seriously and started working as a physiologist and doing more work with athletes, I actually got quite intrigued with the whole idea again. I was actually working a lot with racing drivers, because I did some work in Formula One with the Benetton and the Renault Formula One teams, and we were often, hydration was a big thing for race car drivers. So there was this kind of dual interest in it. So I got a sweat testing machine. The sweat testing machines that we use come from a different field. They're not from sports medicine field. They come from the field of cystic fibrosis diagnosis. And the reason for that is people with cystic fibrosis lose an uncharacteristically high amount of salt in their sweat because of a genetic mutation they have. The rest of us who don't have cystic fibrosis, though, also lose different variable amounts of salt in our sweat, and this test can pick that up. So I got this testing machine and started using it, started testing athletes, found there was big differences in the sodium loss, and started to help them build hydration strategies for long and hot events that were quite individualized for them. And that proved to be pretty successful. And the company that was making the sweat testing machines were interested in what I was doing, because they thought, well, this is a bit weird. This guy's not a cystic fibrosis doctor, yet he's sweat testing a lot of people. This could be an interesting market. And so I talked to them, and it kind of evolved from there, and basically led to us forming a little company to do sweat testing for athletes.
That's
so
interesting.
that's how it all came together. It wasn't as such a master plan of any sorts to get into this, but it's where we've ended up. And what's happened along the way is that athletes were obviously when they've got information about their physiology, their sweat output, and the bare bones of a strategy off the back of that, they want a simple and easy way to implement that strategy. And what I used to do was take variable amounts of salt tablets, figure out the sodium composition of all the different commercial sports drinks on the market, and mix up concoctions for people. But that's not something which can be done on a large scale, and it also requires a hell of a lot of pedantic effort to get it right. So a few years ago, we just developed a very simple range of our own electrolyte supplements that come in different strengths. So we make 4 different products we make 5 different products, but they cover 4 different strengths, from a very, very mild, low strength electrolyte suitable for people whose losses are pretty small, right through to an electrolyte drink that's kind of 3 times stronger than most of the others on the market at the moment. And in that range, we think there's something for everyone, and help. And our mission, if you like, if it's not too grand a phrase, is to help athletes figure out what individualized strategy works best for them to maximize their performance.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm looking at your website as we talk actually, and obviously you've got the four different strengths here from 250, 500, 1000, and 1500. I'm presuming is that milligrams of sodium or
Yeah, it's
something like that.
milligrams of sodium per litre. That is the
Right.
reason we call it that, is because that's how you'll see sodium quantities referred to on a lot of standard nutritional
Yeah,
packets. So it just kind of makes it easy for athletes to compare.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And how would your tablets compare with, let's say, I don't know, the standard mix of Gatorade that you'd get on a traditional Ironman course? What sort of concentration of electrolytes would that have in it?
Usually about 400 to 500 milligrams in Gatorade and most standard drinks. So
Okay,
there are some endurance formulas. I think like Power Bar and Gatorade's endurance formulas have higher levels in, maybe 700 to 800 milligrams.
gotcha.
But yeah, most of them. There's very few indeed that are punching above the kind of the thousand milligram rate. And to give you an idea of the range of sweat sodium losses, we see people losing as little as 200 milligrams per litre of their own sweat, and we see people like myself up near 2,000 milligrams. So there's kind of a tenfold variance per litre. And when
Wow.
you multiply that up over hours and hours of heavy sweating, some people might lose 3 or 4 grams of sodium during an entire Ironman. I'm up there losing probably 30 or 40 grams. And 30,
That's amazing, isn't
yeah,
it, when you put it in those
and
terms?
30 or 40 grams is we're talking like a good handful of salt. It's when you think that the recommendation for taking for sodium in a day-to-day diet is about 2.4 grams for most people. It's phenomenal.
20 times more salt than that you're losing
Yeah,
in in a day of
which is
exercise.
how I sort of look back and have to defend my actions as a younger person of being that person who just puts so much salt on my food, because I just love the taste of it, and I thought it was,
Yeah, me too. Yeah, well, maybe there's something in that kind of form fits function idea that your
there
body
is.
craves it because,
Absolutely, I think it's true. I mean, one thing I used to do was chew salt tablets sometimes during the races. Like split the capsule and chew it, because if it
yeah,
tasted really
yeah,
nice, then I knew that I was getting low, and I would take more. And
yeah.
and
Wow, it all sounds very familiar to me, this,
yeah,
Andy.
well, that's the thing. I mean, it's great. It's great talking to you about it, Rob, because it's like for me, it's sort of, if you like, preaching to the converted. Because people who've had these experiences, we speak to them quite regularly, because they seek us out and they find us, and it's like, yeah, I've always thought this. I've always loved loads of salt on my food. I've always done anything like that. Yeah, they're often signs that you're just making up for a deficit that's being created in the training and
Gotcha.
competing
Yeah.
doing.
So what would some of the signs be that you would look for if you were doing your, I've seen you've got like an online sweat test that people can fill out on your website to help them work out whether they may be an unusually sort of heavy sodium concentrated sweater. What are some of the signs that you would look for in the athlete that will point you towards the idea that maybe they might be needing some supplemental hydration help, essentially?
Yeah, well, the online test that you're referring to came about because not everyone can take the physical sweat test that we offer. And so what we did was we've asked all the athletes we've ever sweat tested, which is in the thousands now. We've asked them questions about how they perceive their overall sweat output to be, low, moderate, high, or very high, whether they feel like they get salt, whether they get visible salt marks on their skin and clothing after training and competition, all those sort of things. And we've put them into this algorithm to spit out recommendations. So the key things are, I think, the first one is, do you sort of see lots and lots of salt residues and deposits on your skin and clothing after training or competing, especially in sort of hot, dry weather when the sweat evaporates off quite fast? That's not
Yeah.
always an indication, because sometimes people with just heavy sweat rates will lose a fair amount of salt, and it shows up like that, even if the salt concentration isn't very high. But they're still losing a large net amount, so have to replace a lot. Other things can be, I used to notice as an athlete that I suffered kind of episodes of low blood pressure quite a lot. So if I was in heavy training, if I was laying on the sofa, back in the day watching a bit of MTV Cribs or something between training sessions.
God, don't show our age, man.
Then what had happened is I'd stand up quick and feel like I was going to pass out, and again I'd learn around that time, sort of almost subconsciously, that was a sign I needed a bit more salt. And the reason for that is that is the exact same reason why people with high blood pressure get told to take less salt in their diets, because when your blood volume is quite closely tied to the amount of salt you've got in the body at any one time. So if you get salt depleted, your blood volume contracts, it drops, and you therefore are more likely to suffer episodes of low blood pressure. So that's another thing, is like dizzy spells and stuff. If you get cramping, not everyone, cramping is a massively controversial topic, and a lot of people will tell you it's got nothing to do with electrolytes. A lot of people will tell you it's got everything to do with electrolytes. My view is that actually there's probably different mechanisms behind cramping, and certainly the anecdotal evidence that we've seen suggests that for a lot of people electrolyte imbalance can cause it, and so sometimes cramping can be a sign of electrolyte depletion, or sodium depletion particularly, and that's especially cramping that occurs late on in events when you've sweated a lot, or post-event. Those kind of night cramps that people sometimes get after a race, when your hamstring goes or your calf goes in bed or whatever. So those
definitely worth a try, isn't it? As a simple solution to take an electrolyte tablet in your water and see if it helps before you look for anything more sinister.
Exactly, and I think part of it's got to do with the fact that I actually think, in a funny sort of way, my own problems were worsened by the fact that not only were my losses of sodium very heavy, but because I was thinking more about dehydration than sodium depletion, I was actually I was sort of diluting myself by drinking lots and lots of extra water to try and make up for what I perceived to be the problem, and then that actually made the problem even worse, because the relative sodium levels in the blood and in the body were dropping. And there's a report that came out last year, a medical report that took blood samples from finishers at the Ironman European Championships, which showed that over I think it was about an 8-year period, 10% of the finishers were finishing mildly hyponatremic, which means that either they were losing tons and tons of electrolytes, or they were over drinking fluids during the race, or a combination of the two.
Yeah. So it's worth pointing that out, isn't it? That if you go out and exercise, and let's say you sweat out half a liter, let's say a litre an hour seems like a reasonable amount, doesn't it, on a hot day?
Yeah.
You sweat out a litre an hour and you drink a litre of water. That litre of water that you've sweated out has actually taken with it between 250 milligrams and, in your case, 2,000 milligrams of salt with it, and you've just replaced it with water, so you haven't put that salt back in. So I think it's really, I always stress this to my athletes, you've got to put in at least some salt with every single bottle of water that you take in, just to kind of stay at the base level, just to keep yourself in an even playing field. If on top of that you're a heavy sweater, or you are someone who's got a heavy sodium concentration in there, you're gonna need to seriously address your salt intake as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right that, I mean, well, where we have to draw the line is that what we're talking about here is people who are training a lot and sweating a lot. For the person who goes down the gym and does 40 minutes, an hour, even an hour of training a couple of times a week or whatever, they're taking enough salt in their diet, and they've got enough stores in the body that drinking water is going to be absolutely fine. If we go to the other extreme and look at a professional Ironman athlete who's training 25, 30 hours a week, then if they were to eat the daily recommended doses of sodium and just drink water instead, then they're going to run serious risk of getting heavily depleted. And I guess most of the people who are listening to this and who are competing in triathlon at age group level are a good way in between those two extremes. And so I think certainly, in the summer, longer, hotter sessions, if you are a heavy sweater, if you're someone who loses a lot of salt in your sweat, then there's actually very little harm and potentially a lot of good that can come from either a bit of extra electrolytes and salts in your water bottles, or in the foods that you're eating with the drinks, or in the foods and meals you're having around, before, during and after training.
Yeah, that's an interesting question actually in the terms of, and I'm thinking here specifically about the guys and girls who are going out to do the 6-7 hour ride in preparation for their, 9 to 15 hour day race day at Ironman. Is there any danger from them taking a bit too much sodium on race day? If they're wondering, well, I've read it's bad to take salt, so I'm going to shy away from taking any. Is there any dangers associated with them taking some extra electrolytes in moderate doses?
Not acutely, and not in what I'd term sort of reasonable amounts, which is, I guess, a dangerous thing to say in some regards. But if you think about it in the context of a normal diet, people eat a lot of things with a lot of salt on them a lot of the time who don't exercise. So if you go down to McDonald's and get yourself a Big Mac and fries, you'll be taking a pretty heavy dose of salt in with all that. And in a healthy body, what happens is your kidneys filter that out and you pee it out. You pee out most of the excess. And the same is true for an athlete who takes a bit too much salt in pre-competition. Obviously what you don't want to do, like with anything, with your carbohydrate intake, your protein intake, and your sodium intake's no different. You don't want to take way more than you actually need, because you're just causing the body to have to process it, and anything in large enough amounts is toxic or dangerous. But in reality, I think there's more danger pre-event in athletes overdoing the fluids, sipping on the water bottle too much, and underdoing the electrolytes rather than the other way around. That's commonly what we see with the athletes that we work with.
Gotcha.
Because I think there's that thing about a bit of nervous drinking in the days leading up to the event. Athletes want to be peeing out clear liquid all the time, which is not always a good thing actually, because if you're peeing clear, it means you've got plenty of water on board because your body's trying to dump some off. But to be doing that all the time just means that you're drinking too much and you're inevitably losing more electrolytes with that.
Yeah, sure. So in the days leading up to the event, we want it to be kind of electrolyte balanced, rather than just water.
Yeah.
Hey, so listen, if somebody wants to actually go through the sweat test and have that done, what would the process involve and where could they get it done?
Well, on our website, we've got looking for a test centre place, and we've got a number of test centres up and down the UK. We've actually got them around the world now. We've got one in South Africa. We've got quite a few popping up in the USA. So that's a good place to start. And you can always just, if it's easy, you can just contact us through the website, precisionhydration.com. Drop us an email with where you live, and we'll suss out the easiest way to get you a test.
What does it involve doing, and how much is it, and things like that?
Yeah, a test is it takes about 45 minutes all in, and the thing that people are gobsmacked about often is you don't actually have to exercise.
Oh really?
Yeah, we use a very clever little system called pilocarpine iontophoresis, which is a way of it's the way of putting a chemical into the skin in the forearm that stimulates the sweat glands just in a small localized area. So basically we make a little bit of your forearm sweat as if you were smashing it up and down the Queen K as hard as you can.
That's as close as I'm going to get.
Just sit in the armchair, and we then collect that sweat into a little sterile piece of capillary tubing, and run the sweat through a conductivity analyzer that measures the sodium concentration. So the test itself, apart from you having to be physically present, doesn't require a great deal of input from the athlete. You just need to be able to get yourself to a place where it's available. Most of our test centres charge about £95 for the test, and it's something which you only have to really have done once, because although there are a few dietary and acclimatization factors that can skew your sweat sodium level up and down a little bit, all of our experience points to the fact that your sweat sodium level is very static for you as an individual, really. So it's kind of a one-time test, and what we always say is it's we need to be as accurate as we do for, say, sizing a t-shirt. So we're aiming to see if your sweat sodium output is small, medium, large or extra large. We're not looking to actually define it to the nearest milligram per litre, even though that's what we can measure. We're just looking at categorizing it to make sure that in combination with your sweat rate and the total sweat volume that you're putting out over different durations of events in different conditions, you're just putting back roughly the right amount of salt. Because what you've got to remember with all this is that the body, if you give it roughly the right amount of fluids and salts and calories, in an Ironman or whatever event you're doing, the body's very good at sorting out the finer details. It's just when you really miss that target by a long way that the problems occur.
Yeah, got you. And if you were going to give people, it's probably hard to do this, but a bit of cheap off-the-cuff advice for hydration during half Ironman and Ironman races, what would you say would be it? Or is there a good rule of thumb for how much to drink during races in normal conditions and in hot conditions?
Well, at the risk of a shameless plug, if people do our online sweat test on the website, which is free, we have this online version of the test. They'll get not only recommendations on which strength of drinks to use, but there's a big section we've done on there on typical requirements of how much fluid to drink. So what we generally recommend is that in sort of what we categorise as low sweat slot loss conditions, which might be cool conditions, shorter events, or just for people who really don't sweat very much at all, and there are people out there who really have very, very low sweat rates, something between obviously nothing if it's a very short event and 500 millilitres per hour is probably the sort of zone that you're looking at working in for consumption of fluid. When you move up to kind of moderate sweat loss conditions, which I guess would be more for the average person, if you like, and in more temperate environmental conditions that we get in the summer in England, you might be looking at up to in the region of 750 millilitres per hour. Now, if you are a bigger sweater or a bigger person in general, and you're really going hard in very, very hot conditions over prolonged periods of time, it might be that something closer to a litre an hour is what you need. But in our experience, very few people can reasonably expect to exceed a litre an hour just because of the ability of their stomach to handle that. So,
Gotcha.
So if you find yourself if you think, I look back at some races, and especially like in Hawaii where I was paranoid about hydration, I was definitely, I think, stepping over the litre an hour mark, and I was getting bloated and sloshing around fluid in my stomach. But because your kidneys they shut down in terms of urine production a little bit when you're racing, and that you don't get rid of it very easily, and it can make you feel really quite ill. So it's a big broad spectrum, but between 0 and 1 litre an hour is the band that most people are playing in most of the time. And if you know you're a bigger person and a heavy sweater, you're playing in that higher end of that range.
That's really good advice, man. I think that's really simplified it down in a way that people can understand and think, that will make a lot of sense to a lot of people. Awesome stuff. Hey, listen, you mentioned maybe a little discount code for the listeners of the Cup of Tri on your products, man. Do you want to give that a plug?
Absolutely. Cup of Tri 10, with the 10 being a 10 at the end of it, and they can use that to get 10% off products on precisionhydration.com. They can do our online sweat guide on there if they'd like to. That's free of charge. And also, we're a small little UK based business. There's myself, there's Johnny, there's Dave, and there's Sean. And contact us through the website if they've got any questions. We love chatting with athletes. We get around to a few races and expos and events in the UK, so don't be afraid to approach us and come and have a chat. We love a bit of that.
Awesome stuff. That's great. So the code again is Cup of Tri 10 with the number 10, and the website's precisionhydration.com. Listen, Andy, thanks so much, man, for taking the time to come on the show. It's been super interesting. I think it's been one of the genuinely most interesting and useful and concise sets of information that loads of people are going to be able to use to make an immediate impact on their racing this summer. So that's been great. Thanks for coming on the show, man. And I hope a lot of the listeners have got something from this. And I encourage them to go and check out your website, because there's loads of free information on there as well, which is just brilliant. I think you give that stuff away for free, man. So thanks very much.
No, thanks, Rob. It's great, and we're delighted. My thing is really, I want to help people not have to make the mistakes that I made with my training and racing. And I think if we can do that, then that's a good start for us.
All right, man. Great stuff. Thanks very much for being on the
Cheers,
show.
Rob. Bye bye.
So there we are, Hells. That's it's interesting topic, isn't it? That people don't really consider, I think, unless they hear something like this. Getting the salt intake right being a critical part of hydration, rather than just how much water have you taken in.
Yeah, and because the hyponatremia is, oh man, it's like you don't want to have it, do you?
Well, I mean, it's worth underlining what Andy said. It can be deadly. There's a chap died from it, unfortunately, at Ironman Frankfurt last year, and I speak from bitter experience here. I've been struck down by it a couple of times back in the days before I understood the importance of, getting the salt intake right on the bike. And when I did,
Nice.
which race was it? No, it was I was all right at Nice because I had it sorted by then. I did the World Long Distance Championships in Almere in 2008, and it was into the 30s that day. It was really baking hot. I didn't take any salt at all, and after the race, I got my little flag autographed by Chrissy Wellington, and I said to my wife, I don't feel so well. And the next thing I knew, I was passed out. I was being sick, and I was in the med tent for 3 hours. It was 3 IV drips. I was just being sick constantly, and my body's basically trying to get the fluid out of me to restore the balance of salt that's still basically in there, trying to get the concentration up by getting the fluid out, and it was just horrible. So yeah, so bad news, man. So people want to go and check out Andy's information that he's got available at the very least. And whatever you do, make sure you sort yourself out for salt tablets or at least electrolyte within each fluid that you drink when you're racing in hot weather, for sure.
And are you pretty good now, even on training rides, Rob? Are you quite good at sort of taking on?
Oh yeah, and I don't just say this. I use these things called salt stick tablets because they're dead handy, and they go in a little Tic Tac box in my back pocket, and I'll take one of those every hour for sure. And it's as important to me as taking, it's the checklist: water, energy, salt. Because although I don't sweat like, my jersey isn't drenched with sweat, all the salt just disappears out of me.
Yeah.
So I've just got to take care of it. And I bet there's more than one person listening who it's the same situation. They just don't realise it, hey?
Yeah, definitely. And then you
get
realise
some of those
too
Bolton,
late.
Helen.
Yeah, when it's going to be...
when it's baking hot at Bolton.
I reckon, Rob, it's either going to be sort of stinking hot, or it'll be like last year, freezing cold.
Oh, you're due a nice year.
Or if we're lucky, it'll be something.
It was super wet last year, and it was cold the year before, so you're due a nice year.
Third time lucky.
Definitely. Third time lucky. Middle of July. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, no.
Mid-July in Bolton.
Yeah, nothing at all. Rob, there are a couple of races coming up this weekend, which have got some British interest. Nikki Bartlett is on the start list for Ironman 70.3 Barcelona. As is, I spotted, Emma Pallant as well is on the start list, and Fraser Cartmel as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. And then Ironman Lanzarote.
It's a classic.
Well, the classic, and the one that I'm quite excited about is seeing about Lucy Charles, the amazing. So she's doing pro this year, isn't she?
Pro debut for her at Ironman,
yeah. And she said, she's realistic, but she wants to be first out of the water in every race that she does. That's kind of her goal for this year, which I think is that is a really level, sensible.
Yeah, I think so, because she's only young, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's turned pro very, very young.
Yeah. She's
a super swimmer, and she could even be first out of the water overall. She could beat all the pro men out of the water, I think. Yeah. The question is, it's like, are people going to heap expectation on her, because Lanzarote is an extremely tough, hilly, windy bike course, and let's see how she goes.
Yeah.
I hope she has an awesome day out there. And what could be better than in your early 20s racing pro because you're a red hot swimmer? Be a great experience for her. Who else is racing is David McNamee.
Yeah, David McNamee, Caroline Livesey as well. David McNamee is. I'm excited to see how he goes this year. He's
lean. He's lost 8 kilos since Christmas. He was on Twitter earlier on. So, he was always a very athletic guy, but he was never one of these stick insect dudes. So it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like. He's been training with Romain Guillaume and people like that with the, is it the BMC Ethics
Yeah.
team? They're all
Yep,
yeah.
that's the one.
So it looks like he's really got it going on. He's coached by my old mate Rob Harvey these days.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, from Manchester Tri Club from back in the day. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes on. He could do something pretty special, I think.
Yeah, and we mentioned Jesse Thomas the other week, and Jan Frodeno as well is racing, so it's going to be a good one.
Great field. Yeah, great field. Lay it down on the bike.
Definitely. Yes, that's
It's
cool.
a proper bike course, isn't it? It's a proper course to race on that one.
Lanzarote, as they say.
Good bike handling skills. You can do more damage on the downhills than you can on the uphills by being fit, I reckon.
Oh, it's a good. It will. And then you always have the joy of the wind as well, don't you?
Oh yeah. Well, that's life, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
Life of the
Lanzarote.
Canaries. Yeah. Right, now listen, we've just got a question for Coach's Couch before we wrap this one up. I've had a question through that says, I've just shifted from training on my road bike onto my TT bike in preparation for my Ironman, and it's absolutely killing me. Trying to hold this position is just so uncomfortable. So can you recommend somewhere for a good bike fit? So do you know what, Hells? This comes up literally every year at this point for me coaching people. And the first piece of advice I'm going to say is, yes, I can recommend somewhere for a good bike fit. But more importantly is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. You're in a completely different position when you get onto your TT bike for the first time. And it might be that you feel great, but it might equally be that all of a sudden your undercarriage feels really sore because it's in a different position.
Yep.
No surprises. And it might be that your neck and your shoulder muscles feel incredibly sore and even get to the point where you can't put the power down just because your neck and shoulders are in so much bother. So here's what I always say to people. You've got to go out and treat the first 3 rides on your TT bike like interval training for your shoulders and neck. So you've got to spend some time in the aero position and some time sitting up. So it makes sense to start out doing something like 5 minutes up and 5 minutes down, 10 minutes down and 5 minutes up, 15 minutes down and 5 minutes up. So you gradually get your back muscles and neck muscles used to being in that position. The second tip I'm going to give is, and this sounds ridiculously easy and stupid, buy some decent chamois cream, because you'll be more forward rotated on your tri bike. There's going to be a different part of your undercarriage rubbing against the saddle. No matter how fit you're on a road bike, often you get chafing down there, let's put it that way.
Yep.
And just having some smooth creamy butter on the inside of those shorts on the chamois means there's a bit less friction and a bit less rubbing going on down there. It's the best £8 you can spend before you go and blow a couple £100 on a bike fit. Okay, so treat it as 3 rides to get yourself into the position where all of a sudden your neck muscles are starting to help out there. Also do your shorter rides during the week on your TT bike if you can, and then after 3 weeks reevaluate and think, okay, maybe I do need a bike fit, but let's take 3 weeks to try and get your body reaccustomed to that position before you start trying to throw money at the problem. How's that sound?
I think that sounds good, because it is if you've spent a lot of time on a road bike, or you're very new to a TT bike, because I was in this situation last year, it does take a while to get used to it. And
you were doing the same thing, weren't you, this point last year? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Oh, have I made a mistake spending all this money? I just can't.
I still think I have.
Put the power down.
Not joking. I still think I made a mistake. But what I would say is I did feel a lot better on it today. So I did my 5 hours on it. And also my main issue was the saddle. And I did change the saddle after a while, because
That's a great point.
It was just agony, and I was getting chafing and whatever else that you just don't want, and it really was putting me off. And I don't think that there's a particular saddle for everybody. I think everyone is different. We're all different shapes, we're all different sizes, and I think you just have to go to a shop which will let you try them out. Don't even think, oh yeah, because everyone says that one's great, that it will work for you.
Too right.
Go somewhere where you can actually try them out. I've told you before.
A lot of decent shops have actually got they've got like a test set of saddles, haven't they? And they'll let you put it on the bike and take it away for a week and give it a go. So it's definitely got to be the way to go when you're looking at spending upwards of £100 or more on a saddle.
Yeah, I think so. And if the place I went for my bike fit, they literally he didn't let me leave until I was comfortable on a saddle, and we tried about 4 or 5 out, and he just
at Bridgetown.
Yep.
You were at.
Yep.
Yeah, great shop.
So
Again, the guys really know the business there, and they'll do everything they can to make sure you're super comfy.
yeah, this is Bridgetown Bikes, which is near Cannock. Mike is amazing, and yeah, I really can't recommend him highly enough.
Anyone who bike fits for Chrissy Wellington and Tom Lowe
And
has got to be doing something right.
Scott
hasn't he? Scott as well was fitted there, yeah.
Yeah, and Catherine Foe.
There we go. Well, there we go. Bit of free publicity for them, hey?
Yep.
Good for them. And I'm a big fan of anyone who helps you out with the saddle to get you comfy.
Oh, honestly, no, seriously. I got to the point, it
that
was
back.
the day before the Staffordshire 70.3 last year, and I was still in a massive dilemma. I was like, I don't think I can do it on this TT bike. I am too uncomfortable. Went in, they sorted me out. The day before,
Nothing like leaving it to the last minute,
nothing
hey?
like leaving it to the last minute. So then I was on this.
Oh, at least you got it sorted.
Yeah, so much better.
Awesome. All right, listen, we're going to have to leave it there for this week's issue. Thanks very much for listening. Tune in again next week. We are the Cup of Triathlon podcast. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray.
Thanks for listening, and we'll check in again with you all next week. Bye now.